No more Space Marines, no more Orcs, no more Sigmarines. Games Workshop won't get away with it this time. Together we will join in a holy crusade that will destroy the corporate practices and malignancy that is Games Workshop. We can finally work together to enact change and stop the and it's already sold out. Hi everyone, my name is Discourse. Let's talk about the Games Workshop boycott and where we go from here. A lot of players have decided to assert some consumer activism on Games Workshop to maybe make them rethink some of their corporate policies and practices. I've spoken to a lot of people recently who are maintaining a boycott, most after the scandalous reveal of Games Workshop employee pay, and others in response to the draconian intellectual property guidelines that Games Workshop have recently updated. And some have been boycotting Games Workshop for a long time because 2021 isn't the only year that Games Workshop have acted like Prince John. These are good principled stands and I completely respect the boycott. However, there's a problem with boycotts. Most casual consumers aren't even aware that there's a boycott in the first place. So yeah, maybe you could spread the word, but the fact is that it just simply won't reach most people, especially the more casual consumers of products, or they simply wouldn't be inclined to support a boycott in the first place. And I can't find it in my heart to really blame them, honestly. I think we're all guilty of picking and choosing where we spend our mental energy on combating the excesses of the structural conditions of our lives. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism after all, so we all draw lines in the sand as to what we personally are going to accept and what we won't. And even by not making a decision, we sort of do by our actions. And here's the thing. People are really bad at keeping the willpower necessary to maintain a boycott for any length of time. Yes, the hobby isn't a necessity and people aren't going to die if they don't get access to their toy soldiers. Except for me, I mainline this stuff. But it's been a hard few years and we all want the comforts of what we're passionate about. And I find that hard to condemn. And this isn't just confined to the hobby sphere. While there are historical examples of boycotts that have worked well, they rarely hurt revenues and aren't often fatal to a company's health. For example, there's been a continuing boycott on Nestle since the late 1970s, and that company has unfortunately been able to crawl its way through the 21st century. And they have literally been responsible for the deaths of millions of infants. So what chance does a boycott on Games Workshop have? But it's not all doom and gloom. Being performatively angry and voicing your displeasure can still do harm to your target, even if you still purchase the product. I'm not saying this to let anyone weasel out of their commitments, least of all me. This is because the true power in a boycott is in generating bad press. In fact, the most successful boycotts have been the ones that have generated the most media coverage, not the ones that get the most consumers to participate in them. The boycotts that grab headlines tend to lead to greater falls in stock price and are therefore most likely to lead to behavioral changes in a company. So every time those Warhammer videos on YouTube get a dislike, it actually hurts Games Workshop, because the more likely it is for press outlets to actually cover displeasure in the community. And it's that second part that actually damages the brand. You have to remember that any public corporation is basically a well-financed psychopath. A lot of grassroots campaigns just aren't successful because they aren't structured the way they need to be in order to enact change. Rather, the types of boycotts that are successful tend to be very loud and very visible, such that they get too much press to ignore and the company bleeds stock value as a result. Unfortunately, to really maximize the efficacy of a boycott, it needs to be organized with strategic precision and come with clear, achievable goals. Organizers of such a boycott need to come to the company with particular asks, ones that present a potential increase in the brand value of the company if it gets on board with the organizer's demands. Unfortunately, in this situation, Games Workshop seem to have broader strategic aims, and it seems like they're willing to sacrifice the existing player base on the altar of those whims. I've discussed what I suspect is the current corporate strategy of Games Workshop in another video, so check out the link above, and I have sources in the description of the video below that discuss the efficacy of boycotts, so check those out if you're interested in more. The unfortunate reality is that no boycott against Games Workshop is really that organized right now, and as Games Workshop grow bigger, which they have done recently, they become further insulated from the action of consumer activism. And more than that, they have very strong counters to any call for a boycott in their arsenal. We already know that they can weaponize the fear of missing out, to the extent that they seem to be adopting this as their entire business practice going forward. And by the way, declaring that you're able to fulfill all your pre-orders isn't exactly something to celebrate. This should be a normal expectation competition. And it's this weaponization of FOMO that will take the punch out of any boycott. Right now, there's just too many new consumers entering this space, and not everyone is as informed as you because you checked out this video, so well done, pat yourself on the back there. So subscribe to the channel to stay informed. Why is the Kill Team box a limited run anyway? Why wouldn't you continue to sell the popular starter box for your new game line? And look, we need to temper our expectations for how successful any boycott can be against Games Workshop. Ultimately, the wargaming hobby space is pretty niche. There's just not a lot of national press covering this, and there isn't even a consensus among the player base that any boycott should occur. Games Workshop product is still selling very well, and I suspect that the upcoming Kill Team release will do so as well. So instead of a boycott on Games Workshop products, I instead propose a buycott. That sounded better in my head. What this means is that you take your eagerness and excitement for new products, models, and game lines from Games Workshop, and you pump that towards an alternative company, one that actually upholds the principles you agree with. This type of consumer activism is far more likely to lead to change and growth in the hobby space. And let's be honest, it's not exactly an onerous task. I give you permission to buy more toys. And this can actually be a really fun process. Get out there and look around for new games and new systems that actually inspire you to be passionate about them. Take the disappointment you have in Games Workshop and transform that into enthusiasm for a new game. And evangelize this system to your friends and to the communities that you belong to. Persuade people to get into the game. Be the change that you want to see. I personally have ordered a bunch of new starter sets for various different game lines, and I can't wait to play them. It genuinely feels like Christmas when a new box of miniatures arrive. Seriously though, I think I'm addicted to starter sets. And this might be a great time to dip your toe into a new type of system that's completely different from the games you've played before. If you play an army level based game, maybe try out a skirmish game. And if you play a skirmish game, maybe try an army level game. Because they all scratch different itches. And here's the thing. I love supporting small companies because you're not dealing with a major corporation. I hate all of the ancillary stress that comes from enjoying the content of a large publicly owned company. With a small company, all they want to do is make a really fun, cool, and niche product. With a large public corporation, all they want to do is turn a profit. And you have to deal with a lot of garbage to get to the good stuff. So try supporting a small company and you'll see what I mean. You get to just look forward to new announcements and you don't have to watch cautiously waiting for the other shoe to drop. Ultimately, I don't want Games Workshop to disappear or be destroyed. I don't really care about the company's stock price or their profits. I just love their games and the worlds that their games reside in. But I do want to see them change their behavior. I'm just not sure whether or not they're capable of that. And the thing about Games Workshop is that the reason they're able to dominate the hobby wargaming space is because of their ubiquity. You know that wherever you go, if you want to have a war game, you're probably going to find players who play some Games Workshop game. Or at the very least, you'll find it very easy to find people who do. The simplest way to help impact that market lead is to disrupt their ubiquity. Help some other systems get their tenterhooks into the gaming space. I mentioned in a previous video that content creators who were making more Games Workshop related content rather than variety miniature wargaming content will probably feel a bit of a chilling effect going forward. The litigious nature of Games Workshop means that there's a real risk of their channels being demonetized if Games Workshop take an exception to the content they produce, or if they have any sort of Warhammer branding in their videos, or any Games Workshop iconography. And let's be honest, if you're covering any Games Workshop product, it's very difficult to avoid including that sort of material. And so, going forward, these content creators know that if they continue to cover Games Workshop materials, then they may just get purged in the future. And this might be a very remote risk, but for a lot of these content creators, that's a very dangerous proposition. Their livelihood is at stake. So I think that naturally, they will begin to cover a larger variety of different games, for the health of their own channels, if anything. And as a player base, we can support those efforts. We can spread the word about different games. We can get enthusiastic about different systems. And maybe we'll have a bigger, more accessible hobby space as a result. Games Workshop don't feel any competition, so they think they can do anything. It's up to us to try and spend our hobby money where we can to help them feel less invincible. And if you're already buying into different game systems, then great job! You're contributing to a future milieu of diverse and interesting games by supporting small companies and helping them survive in this very competitive market. And by doing that, you're helping to fight against the corporate monopoly that Games Workshop represents. So get passionate about other systems and help to grow those smaller games and make Games Workshop's ubiquity a little less unique. And if you enjoyed this content, why not subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button to be notified for when a new video comes out. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye! This is totally not just a mad rationalization that justifies my purchasing of every single starter set I can get my hands on.